Apocalypse Now is a movie that is directed by Francis Ford Coppola. It was produced in 1979 and it stars Charlie Sheen and Marlon Brando. And it's a movie that explores what happens to a mighty army when it starts to lose. It's a fiction, of course, but it's set in Vietnam near the end of the Vietnam War. And what happens basically is Charlie Sheen, he is an officer, he's a special forces officer. He finds himself in Saigon in an apartment. He's come back from home. He realizes that the American people back home are being sold a lie, and he knows the reality that's in Vietnam, and he's he's caught between expectation and reality, and so he's suffering from PTSD. He then gets tasked with a mission. He goes to visit. He's called up to the office of a general, and in the office he's briefed by the general's aide-de-camp, and they explain to Charlie that they are looking to assassinate one of their own. He's a colonel. His name is Colonel Kurtz, and they explain to Charlie that he has gone rogue and that he needs to be eliminated. What I get from the meeting as well is that the general is he's obviously fond of Colonel Kurtz, and he's unwilling to truly engage with the mission, and he leaves a lot of the mission details to his aide-de-camp, who happens to be Harrison Ford. And from it just shows that the general is trying to wipe his hands clean of the whole incident altogether. The aide-de-camp as well, there's a bit of a shake in his voice. He knows that this sort of thing shouldn't happen, but it needs to be done. Possibly they're realizing that the war is not going well, and if it turns out that Colonel Kurtz is captured, he may be an embarrassment to the Corps. And so Charlie leaves that office and he links up with a patrol boat, a river patrol boat, and the crew. And the crew comprises of the chief, the captain of the boat. He's a wise, experienced soldier. He's very wary of Charlie Sheen, and he knows from the look of Charlie that his boat and his crew will be going to the seventh circle of hell. Along for the ride, there is an able-bodied seaman. His name is Chef. He is from New Orleans. He's highly strung, and he's very bitter at the fact that he's on the boat. He's a chef by trade, and he would prefer to be elsewhere. Also, there's a young man from New York. He's obviously about 18, 19. He likes his music, he likes his dancing, but he's also very trigger happy. And finally, there's a surfer. He's a famous surfer from Los Angeles. He's also 19 years of age, but he's also high on acid throughout most of the movie. So they go off on the boat down the river, and throughout the movie, it's definitely not about painting a rosy picture of what's going on in Vietnam. Throughout the movie, you've got scores from The Doors, and it's really ominous doom type music being played. And throughout the movie, there's jarring kind of sounds, and it's very uncomfortable to listen to. Um, but anyways, as this crew are traveling down the river, um, everything they do does not sit well with the local folk. They're a disruption on the river. For example, the surfer decides to go water skiing at the back of the river boat, and as the boat is going traveling down the river, it's disrupting all the sea traffic, the small canoes, the people that are on the shores of the river. Their lives are being disrupted by these loud, noisy, and dangerous people. So the following day, they link up with a squadron of the 1st Air Cavalry. It's a squadron of helicopters, and it's commanded by some Texan officer. The name eludes me. But this particular squadron, they represent the very height of professionalism that is seen in the war at the time. Um, the pilots, you can see from the pilots that are flying these helicopters, they're old, they're very experienced, they know exactly what they're doing. Um, the officer commanding, he's very his purpose is crystal clear. He has a great rapport with the rest of his team. He knows them by their first names, and he's a very, very competent officer. Um, what we see examples of that is they attack a village, and the attack is so well coordinated and orchestrated, they can actually do that mission to the sounds of Wagner, the Flight of the Valkyrie. In fact, they're pumping it out of their speakers on the helicopters. And throughout that particular attack, we see the officer commanding. He tells them to go straight into formation at the very beginning. He's quickly outlining the various targets, priority targets on the ground for his pilots to shoot at. He commends his pilots for being able to shoot moving targets, to shoot the anti-aircraft gun that was in the ground. He was also quick to call in a medical evac in the heat of the battle. He orders a medical helicopter to land inside in the village to pick up his men, and he outlines quite clearly he wants those men in the hospital in 15 minutes. That order is clear and no ambiguity in it. The helicopter lands. Unfortunately, it's blown up by a suicide bomber, and straight away, that officer commanding calls them savages, calls the VC savages, and only within minutes, another one of his helicopters gets hit by anti-aircraft fire coming out of the jungle. The jungle, they're hiding in the jungle, and straight away he calls in for a napalm airstrike on that area. So this guy really, really knows his stuff, and the team that he has under him follow his orders to the letter. However, um, throughout when he finally lands and he's on the ground, he's fearless to the point of insanity. He doesn't wear a shirt, he doesn't wear body armor or anything. He's just standing in the middle of the battlefield, throwing out observations and telling people what to do. And he's fearless. And also he's quite insane because he's more focused on the two guys surfing that he has surfing at the beach side than he is about the bombs going off all around him. Indeed, he actually apologizes to the Los Angeles surfer that he finds out, who happens to be on the riverboat crew. He actually apologizes to him on the fact that The attack was 6 hours too early. The tide was out, and the napalm in the air was actually causing an updraft or unfavorable winds for the surfing. So there's something jarring about that. Um, at the end of the attack, at the end of the battle, at the end of the day, he has called in rest and recreation. There's T-bone steaks on a barbecue, music and beer for his men. Furthermore, we also find out that he's not really he although he's following his mission parameters, he doesn't pay too much attention to upper command because when Charlie approaches him with regards to the mission that he has, that officer, the Texan officer, he's tasked with escorting Charlie and the riverboat crew up the river. Um, he makes little of it. He makes very little of it. And later on, finally, when they part ways, when the riverboat travels further or leaves the aircav squadron, Charlie steals the surfboard of the officer, and just to, and because of that, um, the officer is fanatical enough to actually send out search parties up and down the river, helicopters flying up and down the river looking for a surfboard. What that signifies to me is the fact that maybe even though this officer and his aircraft squadron are at the top of their game, they're winning their battles, they know in the background that the war is losing. And it doesn't matter how much effort they put into this war, they're not going to be victorious in the end. And indeed, the famous line, I love the smell of napalm in the morning, it smells like victory. And when he says victory, it sounds very hollow kind of victory. And so Charlie Sheen and the riverboat crew, they depart and they travel further up the river. Next, they come upon an unusual sight. It's a stage with seating for hundreds of people in the middle of the jungle. And so they find out later that it's a logistics compound. They go in, they get supplies, they find out that there's going to be a show later on. So of course they decide to go to the show. And what is the show? Basically, you have a situation where you have a few hundred GIs whipped up into a frenzy. A helicopter lands, and a bunch of page three girls from Playboy start strutting their stuff in front of the GIs. And what I get from that is the director Francis Ford. He's trying to point out that like it's the entertainment that they had as a consequence to the show that they had lined up. It's cut short, and the reason being that the GIs are whipped up into such a frenzy that they start jumping into the river, swimming across to the stage, climbing up and trying to get at the girls. And of course, the girls had to be evacuated, and they fly away in the helicopter, and it leaves the crowd in a state of despondency and anger. And it just reminds me of the fact that Lionel Messi is currently touring in India at the moment, and just recently he was supposed to play 40 minutes in a stadium, and a lot of people paid a lot of money to get to see him, and he only did 20 minutes and left, and as a consequence they destroyed the stadium. And it just shows that what is wholesome entertainment. You know, it's about what is wholesome entertainment. Like, those page three girls, like, what were they expecting to do with these hundreds plus of soldiers? Like, what kind of comfort could they give, though, could they possibly give to those GIs in the middle of nowhere, far away from home? And indeed, Charlie Sheen outlines that the Viet Cong with rice, or their idea of R&R is a bit of rice and some rat meat. um, the rice and the rat meat actually sounds more wholesome than the show that was put on for these GIs. I suppose it goes to show you that, like, uh, if you really want wholesome entertainment, if you really want to make people feel good about themselves, they should be surrounded with their friends, their family, their community. That's where you're going to get your wholesome entertainment, rest, and recreation. Um, that's not possible in the war zone. So the following day, they travel further up the river, and they come across a bridge. And this particular scene, it's it's it portrays the kind of the the insanity of war, the fact that this particular bridge, as it turns out, it's being built every day and it's being destroyed every night. This bridge, from the look of it, it's useless. It's a wooden bridge. Uh, the reason that it's being built apparently is that senior command have outlined that that bridge needs to be there so that they can confirm it as some sort of a point on a map. And the reality on the ground is it's a rubbish little bridge in the middle of the jungle, and it's being destroyed every night and it's being built up every day. And as a consequence of it, both the army that's building it and the enemy that's destroying it, they're frustrated that it's absolutely ridiculous. It's an exercise in what you call it. It's an exercise in it's an absolutely useless exercise, and everybody knows it. And when Charlie goes to get intel around the bridge, he finds out that there's no commanding officer there, that the people that are there are all, they just want to get out, they want to go home, they don't like this particular job, that like even the enemy are screaming and shouting in the background, and they're telling the Marines to just stop freaking building this bridge because it's just a waste of time, waste of resources, waste of men. So after he leaves the bridge, he travels further up the river. Um, he then the patrol boat crew, one of the the, the New York, the fella from New York, he's only 19 years of age. Um, Throughout the movie, he accidentally murders a group of people on a sampan, and possibly as karma, he himself gets shot. And so they decide, they come across um, um, a French colonial house on the river, and there they meet a group of French people. They bury the poor fella, and Charlie has dinner with the family of the house. And in the conversation, Charlie asks the French, the head of the house, the Frenchman. He's ex-military. Um, Charlie asks him, "Why don't you just go back to France?" And this infuriates the French ex-officer. He explains to Charlie that this is exactly why the Americans are losing the war, because his family has been living in this house for the last 80 years. This is their home, and they will die fighting to keep it as their home. Um, and it just shows that, you know, for an invading force of whatever, um, it's they're really just trespassing on other people's lands, and for and the person who is rooted to that land will fight tooth and nail to keep it that way. And indeed, if they lose that fight, then you're not just losing the family, you're losing community, and you know the people around you that have been living there for donkey's years. Um, so that's what I get from that. Throughout the movie, there's a very Dante's Inferno kind of feel to it. Like I said before, the captain of the riverboat, he knows that his boat is going to hell, the seventh ring of hell. So, how many rings has he gone through? He's gone through about four now at this stage. Um, Finally, they cross the Vietnam Cambodia border, and they find themselves in the territory where Colonel Kurtz is. And this is supposed to represent the center, the hell. So they travel up the river. The captain is killed, and they come across a temple in the jungle. And it really is a scene from hell. Because, firstly, there's there's about 150, 200 men or warriors standing on the shoreline silently, armed with rifles and spears, bows and arrows, sticks and stones, and all around them, strewn all over the temple, are dead bodies, cages, people hanging from trees, dead people hanging from trees. It really is a very macabre sight. And from that point, they allow Charlie to go on shore and meet Colonel Kurtz. Now, throughout the movie, we find out that Colonel Kurtz, Marlon Brando, he's a highly decorated officer. He was being groomed to go to the very top. And before the war in Vietnam had started, Brando had been charged with a mission to go in and come up with a solution as to how to kick the communists out of Vietnam. Colonel Kurtz, he comes up with a solution, and his solution is that with 40,000 men who are dedicated and disciplined and well trained would go into the country and rout out the communists that way. This was his solution, which is very astute. However, as the war started to drag on, the upper command decided to bring in conscription. So instead of not just having, maybe he did get his 40,000 men, but he also got a further 80,000 conscripts. And as a consequence of that, the obviously whatever efforts that were being done by the 40,000 professionals would also be undone by the conscripts. And this has obviously infuriated Colonel Kurtz. As a consequence of that, he then joins, he applies to join Special Forces, the Green Berets, and which is a very unusual thing for a high-ranking officer to do. But he's allowed to do it, and lo and behold, he actually passes the grade, and so he becomes a Special Forces officer. Subsequently, Colonel Kurtz is given a mission to go into Cambodia to disrupt the Ho Chi Minh Trail, to disrupt the Viet Cong's logistics, which he does, and he does it extremely effectively. according to the reports that we hear throughout the movie. Um, However, at some point, he goes rogue, and I feel what must have happened is that Colonel Kurtz has decided um, to take matters into his own hands. Obviously, he's seen that the war was not going. The conduct of the war was not going the way he expected it, so he decided to take things into his own hands and create his own force in Cambodia. Um, as a consequence of that, he succeeds. However, he is now created. He's turned his back on the U.S. and he's also an enemy of the Vietnamese. So he's really boxed himself into a corner. And even though he has a troop of fanatical supporters, he now finds himself in a situation where he cannot win. There's no redemption for him. He can't, there's no way he can get out of that situation. So I reckon that's what caused him to go insane. So when Charlie meets Marilyn, um, Charlie also meets another officer like himself, an officer that was sent in to assassinate Colonel Kurtz but failed. And what's obviously happened is Colonel Kurtz actually turned that officer, and now that officer is a blind supporter of Colonel Kurtz. And what I feel must have happened is that Colonel Kurtz doesn't want to murder Charlie Sheen because he is looking at Charlie as a potential solution to the situation that Colonel Kurtz is in, and the solution being that Colonel Kurtz needs to be assassinated. And so that's what happens. Charlie, he's incarcerated for a little while, he's tortured a little bit. His friend, the chef, Marlon Brando, chops off the chef's head and throws it onto his laps, which in an attempt to scare Charlie Sheen out of it. But at some point, Charlie Sheen wakes up on the riverboat. There's a knife right beside him, and at the same time, there is a ceremony, a pagan ceremony, where they're going to kill a bullock in the temple. So Charlie sees this as an opportunity to assassinate Colonel Kurtz. He does so, but he also finds a book that Colonel Kurtz has written, obviously his memoirs, just to explain his side of the story. And so that's the end of the story, and that was the end of the movie. Charlie gets away. He manages to save the life, the surfer. He's a young guy, and oddly enough, I don't think if this was a Dante's Inferno type play, um, that particular surfer, he doesn't actually murder anybody in the movie. So potentially, Charlie and the surfer, they managed to get out of hell unscathed. Are there any real examples of this in the real world? Is there an army out there that's looking at defeat? Are there characters within that army that are finding themselves in a situation where they are being frustrated to the point of insanity? I couldn't tell you. Leave that up to you. Take care.